You're listening to an archived Cabral Concept podcast. After listening to this show, check out the most up-to-date podcasts available at stephencabral.com/podcasts or search directly on iTunes. And now, welcome to the Cabral Concept, where board-certified naturopath and integrative health practitioner Dr. Stephen Cabral shares how he was diagnosed at the age of 17 with a life-altering illness and given no hope for recovery. It was only after studying and traveling all over the world did he discover how to combine ancient Ayurvedic healing practices with state-of-the-art naturopathic and functional medicine to fully rebalance the body and re-energize it with life. It's time to discover how to get well, lose weight, and finally feel alive again. And now, here's your host, Dr. Stephen Cabral.
Hi, everyone, and welcome back to the show. It's great to have you today, as always. Can't wait to get started with today's Training Thursday edition of the show. Looking forward to getting into specific ways, 3 specific ways, actually, to stimulate brown fat to burn more calories. This will help you lean out. It will help you create more thermogenesis, which means heat in the body, more metabolic rate. So what I want to do today is, if you've never heard about the difference between white fat and brown fat, I'll explain that. I'll explain how it starts to dissipate as you become an adult from a child. And I'll show you 3 proven ways to begin to not only convert more white fat to brown fat and why that's important, as well as how to use that to your advantage to be able to fight obesity, type 2 diabetes, etc. So, exciting research to share with you today. Nothing overly complicated, and you'll be able to take away 3 specific things, and I'll add one more bonus one to be able to do in your life to get healthier and be able to maintain or get that lean physique that you're after. So, if you've never heard about this topic before, there's something in the body called WAT, W-A-T, and it stands for white adipose tissue. Now, this is the typical body fat that most people think about. So let's just say you were to lean a little forward and you were to start to see a little bit of a roll there on the stomach, right around the belly button. Well, that right there that you can pinch, which isn't muscle and it's below the skin, so it's between your rectus abdominis, your abdominal muscles, and between the skin would be subcutaneous body fat, and that subcutaneous body fat is going to be that white adipose tissue. Now, there's 2 main types of adipose tissue. I want to go over that today. The first one being the white adipose tissue, referred to as WAT, just W-A-T, and this is what most people, when they think of body fat, that's what they have. Now, the other type that I've spoken about in the past, before I get into what brown adipose tissue is really important as well, but it's different, okay? This is called visceral body fat. If you've never heard about this topic, I need you to go back, listen at stephencabral.com/1245. And that's because there is literally a deadly form of belly fat that doesn't always look like belly fat because it's harder. So a lot of people think that it's more like muscle-based, but that's because it's interwoven a lot of times with the organs below the muscles or with the muscle. So check that out. That is called the deadly form of belly fat, and how to remove it. That's episode 1245. Okay, so today we're talking about typical body fat and how you can have white adipose tissue as well as brown adipose tissue. Now, brown adipose tissue would be called BAT, B-A-T. So I won't be using that terminology too much, but I do want you to know about it in case you were to see it in an article, etc. W-A-T versus B-A-T. Now, brown adipose tissue, most commonly found in babies and young toddlers. Now, why would they have this? Well, it's interesting because this brown adipose tissue, it gets its color, so I'll go over that first. It gets its color because it's loaded with mitochondria, and those mitochondria are loaded with iron, right? So it's iron mitochondria. This is important because this type of adipose tissue is actually an energy-based body fat without just using itself, meaning the calories stored in body fat as energy. This type of body fat produces energy, and I'm going to get to that. That's why this is actually looked at as advantageous body fat. Brown fat, believe it or not, is advantageous. Now, as a baby, you won't see babies shiver typically ever unless they're really exposed to dramatic cold. And the reason is they have a larger amount of brown fat, somewhere around 5% of their body weight, and that will actually produce heat. So that brown adipose tissue will produce more heat, creating then the thermogenic effect that keeps the baby warm. This is really interesting because now we're starting to get a glimpse of, well, how might we then create more of that as an adult? So I want to get into that. So the problem is, though, by the time a child starts to get to those teenage years and beyond, we have very little brown fat left in the body. But through research, and that's why I do love ancient Ayurvedic medicine and traditional Chinese medicine and the natural hygienists and traditional naturopathy and all that great stuff. But I also love modern day state-of-the-art science. So I love combining the two. I don't think that you have to be a purist and only use one form of medicine. That's why we call it integrative health, right? An integrative health practice is you use the best of everything and you don't say, oh, we'll never use that because, that isn't what was done 5,000 years ago. Okay, well, we want to take the best of 5,000 years ago, and then why not take the best of modern day as well? In Ayurvedic medicine, my mentor used to tell me all the time, listen, I would go through these purist-based phases, right? Well, I'm only going to use herbs. I'm not going to use vitamins because they didn't use vitamins in Ayurveda. And my mentor, who literally wrote the textbooks for the preeminent Ayurvedic teacher in the United States, Dr. Vasant Lad, she wrote those textbooks. And she said, Steve, listen, if Ayurveda was around today, they would be using the best of everything that is natural for the human body. And this is why I'm recommending to you. And she gave me these different recommendations. Some of those for, as I've spoken about this before, P5P, paradoxical 5-phosphate, B6, which my body, became different after I started taking that as well. A nice activated B complex worked wonders, and same with magnesium. But again, this is commonplace now. I try to teach this all the time, but this was not commonplace or common knowledge 15 years ago. It just wasn't. So when she was explaining that to me, I'm like, oh, okay, let me look into this. And then I started reading books on this, not articles, but books, which is what I recommend to you. And lo and behold, these things work. So that's why, again, never push anything out. Read everything. Doesn't mean you have to implement everything, but you want to look at it. So here's the thing, though. We have very little brown adipose tissue when we get to be an adult. What they found, though, was that those people with the most brown adipose tissue were typically the leanest. So now they're looking at how do we increase brown adipose tissue, BAT, in those people who are overweight or obese or at risk for type 2 diabetes or cardiovascular risk, high blood pressure, because they're finding that this can help with metabolic syndromes. Super interesting to me because I want to stay on the cutting edge, and I want to stay on the cutting edge for myself and my family and for you. You're part of my extended global health family. So that's why I want to share these things with you. And again, we might be just on the precipice, we're not there yet, but I know 3 things from the research that I found that you can begin to implement, that you can use in your own life that will not only help you burn more body fat, that's why this is on a Training Thursday, but also you'll be healthier because of it. So super interesting. Here's how you're able to get more brown body fat as an adult. Okay, and it sounds weird that you want to add body fat, but here's why. This is not the body fat that's going to accumulate and add weight on your body. This is the body fat that's actually going to help you boost thermogenesis, which is, you'll see this in about 2 months from now. We have an entire system to boost metabolism, not weight loss. Yes, it was going to help people dramatically lose weight like we've been doing for, almost 20 years, but it's going to do it through a metabolic-based process. We're going to help people clinically boost their metabolism. So one of the interesting things is this, is that you can convert some of your white adipose tissue that you certainly do not want accumulating, not good for your health at all, for cancer, for heart disease, for blood pressure, for diabetes, for higher levels of estrogen. Nobody wants extra body fats because it's not health-based. Again, when I talk about transforming your body, you can do it for vanity-based purposes, and that's okay too. There's nothing wrong with that. There's nothing wrong with that at all. That shouldn't be a bad goal of yours. But what I'm telling you is this. Transform your body, if not for vanity-based purposes, because you want to look a certain way. But what I want you to do is transform it for health. That's what it's all about. if you are looking leaner and you feel like that makes you feel better self-image wise, fine. But do it for health. Do it so that as you age, you have energy. Do it so as you age, you still feel youthful. That, you don't say, 50 years old, that's when the aches and pains start to come. That's when you just start to, try to drag yourself through the day. I mean, these are things that I hear all the time. Like, that is not normal. That's not normal. And I have private wellness clients that I work with in my practice, and they're in their 50s, 60s, 70s, and 80s. And those people are not falling for the trap of, as you age, you're supposed to feel this way. Not at all. We try to reverse that aging process. And we can do that we can do that biologically. And we know we can do that because we can actually look at their aging-based markers. One of those are telomeres, but there's a lot of other markers as well. Okay, so now how do we convert this white adipose tissue? Not all of it, but how can we convert some of that to more brown adipose tissue? When I say adipose tissue, I just mean fat. Adipose just means fat. That's it. Fat stores, fat cells. So there are 3 specific ways, with one bonus way that I'm going to give you, and that's because it's not clinically proven yet. However, I believe that it will be. So rather than just wait for all the research, I want you to start working on it now. Okay, so the first way is this. This is a clinically proven way, and it's something that I talked about on a previous podcast that I'm going to link up today. So here's what I'm going to do. If you head on over to StephenCabral.com/1329. I'm actually going to embed the podcast 1245 talking about visceral body fat. Because if this topic interests you, you really have to check out the podcast 1245 because it's a different, very dangerous type of body fat. We're talking about beneficial body fat today, believe it or not, mitochondrial based. But the other one is very detrimental. So hopefully you've already tuned into that one, or maybe you want to do it as a refresher. But also, I'm going to embed a podcast on episode 1294. And that's who I recommend cold water therapy for. And it will tell you, or cold therapy for, because I'll give you the different science between cold showers, cold baths, or cryotherapy. And I'll show you which one works the best. So check that out, and then also tell you who shouldn't do it. Remember, whatever information I give you, there's always a contraindication. Someone that shouldn't do it, right? And so you'll check out those podcasts for that. But cold water therapy, now this just makes sense, right? It makes sense. If you expose yourself to cold, your body would innately begin to produce or convert a type of more beneficial body fat that then created heat within your body, right? That just makes sense. It makes total sense. That's what we need to be thinking about when we're looking at science and research. What would happen, or what would we have to do in order to create a body fat that we had as a child that would allow us to stay warm without essentially shivering? Well, we'd be able to create this thing called brown body fat at a higher amount. So that is what they're finding. 2 interesting ways to do it. Cold therapy that I outline at that previous podcast I just mentioned that we will embed today, as well as simply exposing your body to a 66-degree temperature for 2 hours. So you could do that cold bath for about 12 minutes or so, and again, I go in depth on that podcast. Or for 2 hours a day, each day, you could expose yourself to 19 degrees Celsius or 66 degrees Fahrenheit for 2 hours. And that can help to convert some white adipose tissue to brown adipose tissue. So pretty impressive, right? That will allow you, and again, you can't cover up. You need to expose your body to the cold. When you expose your body to the cold, it will then do its job to make your body survive, right? That's what this is all about. Our bodies, as long as the stress is not too high, and I did another podcast on that called Hermetic Stressors, as long as your body is able to withstand the stress, and cold is a stress, that's why it's not right for everyone, your body will actually start to burn more body fat. Impressive. I love that, right? That's something that we could do if we were really interested and serious about this. All right. The next one is this: eating more. And I know that sounds crazy, but it sounds crazy only because we're living in a world that promotes low-calorie diets to try to lose weight. And I've talked about this before, but if you go too low-calorie for too long, you're only going to slow your metabolism, which means that when you do decide to eventually eat more calories because you don't want to starve yourself anymore, you will yo-yo. And that means that your body, after just dropping down low in calories and losing some body fat, will gain the weight back plus more. And then you'll say, well, let me go back to the low-calorie diet, and you'll do that, and your metabolism will drop even lower, which means you will survive on less calories per day. That is only a good thing if you're trying to survive, but not transform your body. So now when you eat again, now it's excess surplus because you go back to eating maybe 1,800 calories a day, but your metabolism now is only set at 1,000 calories a day, and it was set previously at 1,400. So now you're lowering and lowering and lowering. And that's what we see so often with a lot of women, especially on a ketogenic-based diet or a very low carbohydrate diet, below 60 grams or so per day. So it's interesting because we do a low carbohydrate diet as well, but we never do it for more than 21 to 28 days. And then we always do at least one refeeding meal per week. And that means that that's going to be a carbohydrate-rich meal. So I have 2 studies to link up for you today. Let's see. The first one I'm going to link up right here, a long one, really, really nice one. It's called Brown and Beige Fat in Humans, Thermogenic Adipocytes that Control Energy and Glucose Homeostasis. You don't need to know what that means, but basically we're talking about brown fat, how it creates heat in the body, and how it uses glucose to actually fuel the body. So it's really, really nice. That was on making sure that you bring your calories back up to increase that. And the other one was on a carbohydrate-rich meal. So a carbohydrate-rich meal, it's at a second time after that carbohydrate-rich meal was ingested, the body was better able to use something called uncoupling protein 1. And what this does is it allows for additional cellular respiration, mitochondrial ATP, and the activation of the brown adipose tissue to increase glucose and free fatty acid oxidation, which simply means that your body is now beginning to burn body fat and fuel at a greater rate. So really nice. So, again, I've been talking about this for years. I really want you to know that I have no dog in the race here. This is science, but it's also about balance. You will never find the right diet for you for the long term that goes too far in any one direction. 70% fat is not a good long-term diet. An all-meat, carnivore-based diet is not a good, healthy diet in the long term. So we have to understand, it's all about balance. It's going to take a little bit of time to balance your body. We see that typically happen in our practice between 6 and 12 weeks. A functional medicine detox absolutely helps speed up that process. Healing your gut speeds up that process. Following the de-stress protocol helps speed up that process. And that's when your body can ease back into a more normal, balanced diet. So yes, on our 21-day functional medicine detox, we're going lower carbohydrate. We're opening up detox pathways. We're helping to balance inflammation. We're helping to balance healthy levels of glucose and blood sugar and healthy levels of hormones like estrogen. Like we're helping with all of those things. And then we're easing out of that lower carb diet. So I understand, and again, I've done this for a little bit of time with myself and in my practice to know that this is what we need to do. If not, if you go too severe in one direction, it's going to create a massive imbalance in the long term. So what works in the short term does not necessarily mean it's healthy in the long term. And that's what it's all about. All right. So the last thing I want to share with you is this, and that's why it was on the Training Thursday, is that exercise stimulates a protein called irisin. I believe it's pronounced irisin or irisin. And it helps to transform some of that white adipose tissue or white fat to brown fat. And the amazing thing is that it fits within our current system of looking at exercise. We can use 150 minutes a week, still proven for that, 150 minutes a week. What is that? I've talked about that before. Well, it's basically 4 days times 40 minutes. I love that formula. 20 minutes strength training, 20 minutes cardio. It works so great for the most amount of people out there, and it's really nice balance depending on, you don't even have to worry about your genotype because of that, because it's so nicely balanced. But it could be however you want to do it, honestly. But if you do 4 minutes times 40 minutes, you're good. 5 days times 30 minutes, you're good. That will just give you more days than not of exercise. And for overall health, that's what I recommend. However, let's say that you're someone that's doing really high intensity interval training. You're doing sprints and even swimming laps that one of these studies showed. Okay, high intensity. Then you can cut your exercise time in half and still be able to stimulate that brown adipose tissue. That means with 75 minutes instead of the 150 minutes, and you could do that, what? Well, you could do that in 4 20-minute workouts per week. And that's why those do matter, right? You could do, just check out the previous Training Thursday. It wasn't even that long ago. I'm going to see if I can find it right here. Yeah, it's the body weight workouts that I'm doing right now. You can do them in 20 minutes. That's what I've been doing, but I've been trying to do them daily. Like, that's the point. Well, my life is in utter chaos in a good way over these past few weeks. And you can check out the podcast of why that is in a good way. But that's the nice thing. 4 days a week times 20 minutes. You can cut it in half if you are moving that body and you're doing high intensity and you're sprinting, right? Is it good for every person? No, it just depends on what level of stress your body can take. You have chronic fatigue syndrome, you have Addison's, you have myalgic encephalitis. Probably not the best thing for you, right? But if you're a average healthy person, then this could be totally fine. So really nice, again, science backing up what we can do to convert unnecessary, unwanted extra adipose tissue, white adipose tissue, to now a mitochondrial energy-based thermogenic form of body fat. All right, the last bonus tip I wanted to give you today, because I know that I could talk for hours on this topic, is that potentially, and I think we'll find this, potentially those people that are better able to manage their insulin levels overall and throughout the day are going to convert more white fat to brown fat. And here's why. What we're finding is that brown fat is working to manipulate in a good way your overall blood sugar balance. And because of that, it can potentially help with type 2 diabetes, insulin desensitivity, etc. So I'm willing to bet that they're going to show that fasting, again, don't go overboard, but normal fasting, as well as maybe the one longer day a week, the quarterly longer one, you can check out my podcast on fasting. All of that is going to be shown. I believe this. I truly believe it. So I want you to know ahead of time, but not proven yet, that you'll be able to convert more white to brown body fat in periods of fasting because it's survival based, okay? And also you are better regulating blood sugar. So we have a great product that I can link up today as well that helps you manage healthy glucose levels, and that's the support glucose. So I will definitely link that up today. And if you don't know your insulin levels right now, I can't recommend enough the thyroid adrenal hormone. It will show you your insulin, hemoglobin A1C, your thyroid, because if your thyroid is low, there's just no way that you're going to be able to create the amount of fat burning that you want, and your vitamin D. I also believe in the future, they're going to link vitamin D levels to a greater potentiation of brown adipose tissue. And the reason is that we know if you don't have enough vitamin D, you're not going to be able to burn body fat as well. I mean, that's the truth. So that is what I recommend implementing. Those 3 plus the bonus one. The last one, everybody should be doing, right? It's just like manage those insulin levels, 12-hour overnight fast, a little longer for some people, and you're going to be well on your way to being a healthier human being. And if you're a healthier human being, I have no doubt in my mind, you're going to also have a leaner physique, which for the most part, a lot of people are after, at least people we see come to our practice. So hopefully this has been helpful. As always, if it was, please do feel free to share this information with anyone you believe it can serve. Take care, everyone. Did you know that the body really only becomes sick or imbalanced in only 2 ways? Over time, you become deficient in vital nutrients, and you also accumulate toxins internally and from the environment. As those nutrients diminish and you increase your total toxic load, your body then begins to show the first signs of dis-ease. It's actually quite predictable, and the good news is that if we know how you began to fill up that proverbial rain barrel, we also know how to empty it to begin the healing process. I was fortunate enough to learn this ancient healing process from my mentor after suffering from debilitating diseases for close to a decade. It was only when I began to implement these techniques did I finally overcome my illnesses and go on to live a life of energy and vitality that I now enjoy. I'd like to share with you now what I discovered after traveling all over the world and how to combine the best of ancient healing wisdom with state-of-the-art science. Allow me to teach you exactly how I've been able to help over 250,000 people to empty their rain barrel and begin to transform their body and lives into what they've always hoped they could be. To get your copy of the international bestseller, The Rain Barrel Effect, simply go to stephencabral.com/rainbarrel.